Question. Hello, Mr. Michaels. I will start by saying I believe my constant prayer was finally answered last night as I stumbled across your book on Christmas of all nights. An answer to a prayer of please guide me, show me the truth from you, God, not man. I have been on an intense spiritual path these past few years and have become quite frustrated. I've been devouring books over the last year from theologians, scholars, etc., as I finally overcame my fear and was brave enough to read the Nag Hamadi book. As a cradle Catholic that has come and gone from the church over my 43 years, I finally decided if I am condemned to hell, as the church says, for reading such things, why? I have questioned the church's validity since a child, but being raised in it, I had to push that feeling aside, for it was sinful. As a horribly abused child, but now a homeschool mother who encourages our children to seek, find, and question, I can apply the same thinking to myself for once. Anyway, I ended up reading a book about Jesus and the Essenes, and the mystical Jesus was introduced to me. A dim light finally came on, and down a rabbit hole I have gone. So last night I typed in mystical Jesus, and several books came up, and as I have done over the past year, I find books, buy them on eBay, and wait. Last night, however, many books popped up, and as I was fixing to buy one, your book popped up as the "You may also be interested in" the mystical teachings of Jesus. I read the brief synopsis and thought, I need to read this now. I did not want to wait, so I purchased it and started it on my Kindle last night. I must say, within just the first few pages, tears began to stream down my face as I felt as though I was reading all my own thoughts. All the questions, worries, fears of what I was feeling were all right there. I so looked forward to reading this and many of your other books I now have a list of. So sorry to have gone into the weeds. My question is, over the past year, actually you don't need to be sorry, it's rewarding for me to hear people's testimony of how they found the teachings of the Ascended Masters and how they were open to it. It also feels like it's rewarding for me to see that my work helps other people. So my question is, over the last year, with all the books I have read, some almost feeling hostile towards Jesus, and podcasts I have listened to, how do I overcome that nagging voice of fear the church planted into my psyche? This is a heresy. You are not to question the church or Jesus, etc. All the church's dogmas and fear-based brainwashing. I can feel a stir in my soul or spirit if a person's tone or writings make me uncomfortable, and I will stop reading or listening to that person. Will this feeling and fear go away as I get closer to what my soul has been searching for? For as I stated, as a homeschool mother, I encourage my children to seek, find, and research. I would never punish them for doing so, so I find it hard to believe the loving God I believe in would punish me either for seeking. I guess I'm just looking for reassurance that it is okay to seek God outside of the crucified Jesus statues in the church that have always unsettled my soul and spirit. I'm too sensitive of a soul to even look at them. All they bring is sadness and pain and a question of why. The narrative has to be different from what the church has terrified me with my whole life. I'm just hoping you could help me understand if those feelings of I am doing something wrong will go away. I also must add your book did not give me any uncomfortable feeling. It is giving me a finally found it feeling. So thank you. Well, there's a lot of things here we can unpack, but the central question, will the feeling of fear go away? And I would say yes, it will go away, but it'll really only go away because you question it. And when you have been indoctrinated with this for so long, you probably have to question it in stages. It's not going to happen just overnight. There's probably not I don't think there's a magic answer I could give you that would help you be free of this instantly. But what I will say is that you can look at it in a couple of ways here. How do I overcome that nagging voice of fear the church planted into my psyche? That this is heresy. Well, one way to do this, you're recognizing, right? And whatever else you describe here is you're a very intuitive person. Because, and intuition is what you describe with your children. You seek and you ask questions. That's what intuition does. Fear overrides intuition. But if you were totally in fear, you would never have recognized your intuition. You would never have dared to ask any questions. There are many Catholics and other religious people that don't dare to ask. I mean, my wife is from Poland, which is the most Catholic country in Europe, maybe in the world right now. And many people they don't dare whatsoever to question the church. So by the fact that you've done this since you're a child shows that your intuition has already become stronger than your fear. So you just need to basically continue using your intuition to identify the beliefs that you have that cause the fear, and then reach for a higher understanding that replaces that limiting belief. Because you can look at it this way: where does fear come from? It comes from an illusion. I mean, you're saying it yourself. Why would God want me to fear? Right? Because if you look at it logically, God has no fear. Why would God fear anything? Right? If God is all good, almighty, why would God need to fear anything from earth? I mean, it's this complete, whatever you want to call it, blindness that we think that the God who created the entire universe, as vast as it is, would fear anything from us human beings on this little planet? I mean, why would God have anything to fear from us? So therefore you can say, and you can say, another reason why God has nothing to fear is that God understands itself and the world it has created, right? God can answer all of your questions. So why would God fear you asking the question? So that's why you can ask yourself, why does the church discourage you from asking questions about church doctrine? First of all, because the church itself is based on fear, the fear that you could leave. Why would the church prevent you from leaving if it didn't somehow fear that it would be empty of members? So it's seeking, out of its own fear, it's seeking to keep you in fear, right? And that's why I'm saying, why does the Catholic Church, you look back at the history of the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages, what were they doing? The witch hunts, the Inquisition. They were deliberately torturing and killing people who questioned church doctrine. This is historical fact. But why were they afraid that people would question doctrine? Because they knew that the doctrines couldn't answer all of the questions that people have about life, about the spiritual side of life, and about God. And as I said, of course God can answer all of your questions, so why would God be afraid of you asking questions? But the church can't answer your questions, and that's why they are afraid of you asking questions, and that's why they want to discourage you. And how will they discourage you? The only way they can see, through the fear that they are driven by. And so, you know, what you can ask yourself also is, if God has all the answers, and the church is trying to make me afraid of asking questions for what are God's answers, what does that say about the church? That they don't have the answers. But what's the claim of the church, the Catholic Church? They are the only true church that can lead you to salvation. They're the only true representative of Jesus Christ. But if they really were in complete alignment with Jesus and God, they should have all the answers from God. And if they don't have these answers, they must not be in alignment with Jesus and God. What else explanation is there for the fact that they do not have the answers and that they have to make you afraid of asking the question? You see, you could look back at the Catholic Church and see how it was created. And you could see it was created, it was not Jesus who created the Catholic Church, okay? Because the Catholic Church didn't come into being until 325, 300 years after Jesus lived. And there's nothing in the Bible that says, thou shalt anoint the Pope, and he shall tell you what to believe about me. Right? So it was created by the Roman Emperor Constantine for political reasons, and he wanted to use it to unify his empire by controlling people. So from the very beginning, the Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church, was created to control people. And how do you control people? Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. The truth sets people free. You can only control people if they don't have the truth. But why would God need to control you? Ask yourself this question, you know. If you believe what the Catholic Church says, God created everything. He created you as a sinner, so you have to be saved. But why would God need to control you through an outer church here on earth? If God could just change your status as a sinner, he could just change it. Say, yeah, I don't really like what I created. I'm going to change them so they're not sinners. I mean, why would God need to control us here on earth through an earthly institution? When, as I said, God has all the answers. Why would God be afraid of us asking questions? So, I can feel a stir in my soul or spirit. If a person's tone or writings make me uncomfortable, yes, that's your intuition talking. That's basically, as I explain it, I don't know if you're familiar with these teachings yet, but as I explain it, we have an outer personality. This is actually what is often called the soul. But you'll find this in several of my videos and books. So we have an outer personality. It has several aspects. The highest is our sense of identity. But this is our sense of identity related to earth. So this is where we are often brainwashed from the very beginning. We're human beings, we're sinners, for example. We were born into sin. We are this nationality, that nationality, this sex, this ethnicity, and so forth. This race and that race. So this is our sense of identity. Then we have our the mental level of the mind, which is where our thoughts and beliefs are. And then we have the emotional, which is our feelings. And then, of course, there's a part of the mind that's integrated with the brain. So this is our outer mind, and that's where our fears are, because our fears reside in what I call subconscious selves. You probably haven't come across that, but if you want to go further with it, you can. I have some videos about this, subconscious selves. So anyway, it's you were talking about how do I overcome the nagging voice of fear the church planted into my psyche? That's because they have caused you to create in your mind what I call a subconscious self that is based on fear. That you can only be saved through the church, and if you question the church, you'll go to hell. It's a belief that's planted there in probably your identity mind and your mental and emotional as well. Because it has both feelings and argumentation, but also this sense that, oh, I'm a sinner. But your intuition is beyond that. So what I'm saying is, you have this outer personality, but behind that is the core of your being, which is what I call the conscious you. And it's just pure awareness, neutral awareness. But that core of your being is connected to a higher self, which is in the spiritual realm. And intuition is really when you get an impulse that comes through to your conscious mind from your higher self or your spiritual teachers, what I call ascended masters. That's intuition. And it comes from a higher level. So you could say, why would God fear you asking questions when God, through your intuition, can give you the answers that aren't even found in the church doctrines? So that's your intuition. So you're literally, what you're describing here is what many spiritual people have developed over the years, and that's why they're spiritual. That's why you are open to something beyond the church teaching, because you've already developed this intuition. So you just need to continue to develop it. And the teachings and tools that I have published are just meant to do one thing: help you develop your own intuition until you get your answers from within. And you really don't need me or the outer teachings anymore. Will this feeling and fear go away as I get closer to what my soul has been searching for? Well, yes, but I would say it will go away when you start questioning this what I call a subconscious self. In other words, why do you believe? As I usually say, behind these subconscious selves is an illusion you came to believe in the past. So you really need to question, why did you come to believe this? What is the belief you have? What is the... See, I didn't grow up Catholic. So what specifically is your personal belief about why it's dangerous to question the church, why you could only be saved through the church, why you are a sinner, why you are imperfect, there's something wrong with you and you can't know truth on your own, but you have to... There's probably more than one belief there that's hiding, that the Catholic Church has, as you said, they have planted into your psyche. They have some kind of hook there. And the feeling will only go away when you look at this belief and you consciously replace it with a higher reality that you sense intuitively. It's not about me or an outer teaching telling you this. It's about you coming to see intuitively the higher reality that replaces fear. As I said, God has all the answers. So why would he be afraid of you asking the question? But the church is obviously afraid. And what is the belief that made you believe this? That it's dangerous to question the church's answers, when those answers are obviously limited or flawed. When the church's answers are out of alignment with God, and they must be, since they're afraid of you asking questions. Why do you believe this? Why did you come to believe this? What are the words in your mind that come up when you consider these things? And if you keep going, and I have some videos about these subconscious selves, how to overcome them, if you keep using those tools and keep going around that problem, looking at it from different angles, you will come to a point where the feeling does go away. But it goes away because you consciously saw the belief that caused you to have that feeling in the first place. You see what I'm saying? It's not really an unconscious process that just happens automatically because you find some outer teaching. You have to look at yourself in your psychology and get beyond it. And so I find it hard to believe the loving God I believe in would punish me for seeking. No, of course not. I mean, you can even do a simple thing. The first two commandments, what are they? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Yeah. So keep seeking for the one loving God that you intuitively know must exist. Second commandment, thou shalt not take unto thyself any graven image. What is a graven image? It's any belief, any idea that hides the true God. So in other words, the true God wants you to experience itself. And therefore the method for doing that is question any image created on earth that stands between you and your direct experience of the true God. And if that image happens to be a church doctrine in the Catholic Church, question it anyway, or you are violating the first two commandments. You not see that when the church says don't question anything, they're actually encouraging you to violate the first two commandments. Anyway, so I guess I'm just looking for reassurance that it is okay to seek God outside of the crucified Jesus statues in the church that have always unsettled my soul and spirit. Yeah, even though I didn't grow up Catholic, I can certainly relate to that. I always felt this focus on the crucified Jesus. Why? I mean, we are focused on Jesus being born. We are focused on Jesus dying on the cross. But what happened in between is not so important. We are focused on what Jesus did for us. But as I have said many times, Jesus was meant to be an example that we can all reach a higher state of consciousness where we know the one true God and we have let go of all the idols, the graven images in our own minds that stand between us and our direct experience of the one God. But the reason why these images unsettled you is again your intuition. You knew there's something wrong here. So again, just be true to that. Dare to follow your intuition. Follow your heart, listen to your heart, listen to your intuition. I am too sensitive of a soul to even look at them. Yeah, but that's again your intuition. You are sensitive, right? And it's again this, you're open to receiving something from a higher realm than the material world. And this is what I realized many, many years ago. I actually realized that basically all religions on earth are in some way affected by the human consciousness, our fears. And that what I wanted was a spiritual teaching that was incorruptible. And I realized that can only be if it comes from a higher realm, from beings who do not have any self-interest. They're not seeking to control us, and therefore they don't need to use fear. They don't need to make us afraid of asking questions or looking. They don't need to make us afraid of using our intuition. They want us to use our intuition because that's the only way we connect to them. And it's the same thing you feel, it's the same thing millions of spiritual seekers feel. We want something that's real, something that can't be manipulated by human self-interest or even by darker forces. All they bring is sadness and pain and a question of why. Yeah, that's obvious. I mean, but again, the question of why, that's again your intuition talking, not your fears. So it's a matter of following that. The narrative has to be different from what the church has terrified me with my whole life. Yes, it definitely is. There is no question about that. And that is what you, as you continue to use your intuition and use the outer teachings to stimulate that intuition, you will come to a point where you will just make that switch. And you just experience, absolutely, the narrative is different. I'm just hoping you could help me understand if those feelings of I'm doing something wrong will go away. Yeah, and I've commented on this already, but what I don't know. I mean, sometimes I remember when I was younger, I was sort of, I also had a little bit of this fear. It was a long time ago, but I dealt with this fear of, what if I go to hell? What if I'm completely wrong? What if the churches are right? And I used to try to trick my mind, because I used to say, okay, well, let me look at the fear. And you can sort of reverse the fear, right? Because you can say, what if the church is wrong, is out of touch with the reality of God? What would then happen if I uncritically, blindly followed the church? I mean, didn't Jesus talk about the blind leaders? And if the blind lead the blind, they are both going to end up in a ditch. And you can look at it again. You can ask yourself also, at Jesus' time, who recognized Jesus? A lot of Christians today believe that, if they had been alive at Jesus' time, of course they would have recognized Jesus. They would have sat at his feet all the time. But you look at reality, the scribes, the Pharisees, most of the Jews didn't recognize Jesus at all, didn't see anything in him. They stuck to the existing doctrines. Today, the dominant doctrines is the Christian churches. But again, who is it that's the true followers of Christ in today's age? Those who look beyond the outer doctrines and are willing to follow their intuition. Because what allowed people back then to recognize Jesus when they met him physically? Their intuition. Oh, there's the story of after the tomb was opened, there are two of his disciples that are walking, they meet Jesus in the road. And afterwards they said, why didn't we recognize him? Our hearts were burning within us. So they recognized that when they were sitting with Jesus and listening to him, their hearts were burning. That's your intuition. And so that's why I'm saying again, recognize that burning of the heart, follow that. And any force that wants you to shut that down out of fear cannot come from God, cannot come from Christ.